It emerged to challenge the notion that politics belong solely to the privileged few and fulfill the promise of our lucky country, a land of opportunity, a land of harmony, and a land of equality. It is a party I've proudly served. The ongoing genocide in Gaza is a tragedy of unimaginable proportions. It is a crisis that pieces the heart and soul, calling us to action with a sense of urgency and moral clarity. We have all seen the bloodied images of young children losing limbs, being amputated without anesthetics, and starving as Israel continues its onslaught live-streamed across the world. As a representative of the diverse and vibrant communities of Western Australia, I'm compelled to be their true voice. To be their true voice in this chamber, especially when the cries for justice and humanity echo so loudly. Unlike my colleagues, I know how it feels to be on the receiving end of injustice. My family did not flee from a war-torn country to come here as refugees, for me to remain silent when I see atrocities inflicted on innocent people. Witnessing our government's indifference to the greatest injustice of our times makes me question the direction the party is taking. I'm torn, deeply torn. On one hand, I have the immense support of the rank and file members, the unionists, the lifelong members, the party volunteers, who are calling on me to hang in there and to make change happen internally. On the other hand, I am pressured to conform to Caucus solidarity and toe the party line. I see no middle ground, and my conscience leaves me no choice. I'm here to be WA's voice, not just on this matter, but various issues that Western Australians have raised with me, from incarceration rates of Indigenous people to locking up kids as young as 10 years old, from the rising cost of living pressures to families living in cars and tents due to the housing crisis, from struggling to put food on the table and pay the bills to the climate crisis. These are all the issues that West Australians care about. Our actions must align with our principles. When history looks back, it must see that we stood on the right side of humanity even when it was difficult. Sadly, I do not believe our principles align with those of the leadership of the Labor Party. With a heavy heart but a clear conscience, I announce my resignation from the Australian Labor Party. I have informed the Prime Minister that effective immediately, I will sit on the crossbench to represent Western Australia. I'll take some questions now.
Senator, are you in touch with the Muslim vote or Muslim votes matter? Obviously, they're not a party, but they want to get behind independents who are representative of the voice. Have you started discussions with either of those organisations?
I've had a conversation with community members from Sydney, and I do know that they are willing to put independent candidates, but that's the extent of my conversation with them. Among that, I've had many other discussions and conversations with other community groups, not just Muslim, but across WA and the country.
So, apart from the issue of Palestine, do you envisage you will still vote largely along Labor lines in the centre and other issues like climate, economic issues and industrial relations and so forth?
I will have to see it and take it based on the motions that are brought forward and the pieces of legislation. and time will tell. I haven't thought that far.
Senator, when West Australians voted for you, most voted for the Labor Party, in all likelihood, not for you personally. To West Australians who wanted a Labor senator, what can you say?
They have entrusted their voice in me, and they've entrusted me to represent that voice here, and I will continue doing that and serving them, whether that be as a former Labor senator or currently now as an independent senator.
Senator Payman, may I ask whether there was a particular moment that was the breaking point where you believe the Labor caucus and the leadership did not reflect the community views? At what point did this become something that you were seriously considering leaving the party?
It came on the topic of the recognition of Palestine, where in our platform back in 2021 National Conference, it was voted on, and then again in 2023. And I understand the party, the Labor Party, to be representative of the rank and file members, the unionists, the people who make up what we are as what the Labor Party is as a party. And I felt that my conscience would not let me compromise on an issue that was important to so many rank and file members and unionists and people out there that looked up to the Labor Party as the party that would champion human rights, a party that would stay firm and have that strength of conviction.
What was it just the Greens emotionally and their criticism from Labor colleagues that you didn't have anything to say about the debate, either debate in the caucus about being in that?
I've had various individual conversations with the Prime Minister, the Deputy Prime Minister, the Foreign Minister, and individual caucus colleagues, and I've used channels through the caucus committees that when I had access to them, and my own left caucus faction committee meetings that I would attend, and raised it on multiple fronts. I felt I exhausted every opportunity to raise my concerns, whether it was back in November of last year or more recently, and I just felt that there was no place for me to continue. These conversations and decisions were already made by the time it was brought to caucus.
Senator, just further on that, was there something about the nature of the caucus, the whole caucus meeting, that you felt you weren't able to speak up? And what do you say to people who say you would be more effective in changing Labor's position by remaining within the party?
Look, people have various views, and I respect that, and everyone's entitled to their views. I'm not going to talk more about the internal workings of how, within caucus things are managed, but I just felt that I had exhausted every option to continue raising this, and seeing the overwhelming support that I had received from branch members across the country, not just from my home state of WA, but also rank and file members, unions coming out in support. I knew that, if not now, then when are we going to, finally do what our members are calling for?
Do you feel a betrayal by the Labor Party, considering the fact they went back on an election promise of recognising Palestinian statehood? Do you feel betrayed that they're not following through on that promise, and you have had to be put in this tough position to then leave the party that you were elected in?
This definitely has been the most difficult decision of my life, and it has put me in a very tough position. And like I told the Prime Minister on multiple occasions and my colleagues, that this is a matter that I cannot compromise on. It is a matter on principle, and when I voted to cross the floor, it was on conscience. This is a matter that I could not take on lightly and just wait for whenever this peace process is going to happen. So, a question that I would pose is, how many more does Israel need to continue killing before we call it an end and start talking about that peace process?
Can you elaborate, Senator, on what the suggestion that you're being guided by God in your decision making, and will you campaign on sort of other Islamic Muslim type of issues?
I don't know how to respond to that question without feeling offended or insulted, that just because I'm a visibly Muslim woman that I would only care about Muslim issues. This topic on Palestinian recognition, but Palestinian liberation, is a matter that has impacted everyone with a conscience. It is a matter that's not just a Jewish versus Muslim issue. This is a matter about humanity, about freedom, about equality. And I know that there are decent people out there who want to see a free Palestine, but also these are the universal principles that we as Australians stand for.
Senator, on the two-state solution, the government ministers have asked why you would support their amendment that still would recognise Palestine in a similar fashion to the motion, but just tacked on as part of the two-state solution which you said you support. Can you just walk me through that decision?
Thank you. It was the conditionality of that recognition that I was not okay with. We have already gone through our rank and file processes to actually put it in our party platform, and I hold the party platform as a big deal, or at least I did as a former senator. You cannot, and as I've previously mentioned, you cannot acknowledge a two-state solution where one of those two states are not recognised. And this needs to happen in order to continue putting pressure on Israel to cease its onslaught and the massacres that it's committing in Gaza and detaining innocent Palestinians in the West Bank.
Senator, you said you were being intimidated into resigning. Can you just elaborate on what you meant by that?
So there's been a mixed response that I've received from Caucus members, but the intimidation has been in many fronts. Just in general, when it comes to, being escorted to the Prime Minister's office, almost on show for everyone to see what was happening, because I received many messages from people that shouldn't have known what was going on, or senators making it very clear that they didn't want to sit next to me in the chamber. Or in instances where there were stand-up tactics of wanting to push me towards and invading that space that I had, and also just controlling and constantly pushing me for an answer when I hadn't made a decision about whether I was going to cross the floor. And on record, as I've mentioned, I decided to cross the floor on the Senate floor while the divisions were taking place prior.
Senator, just specifically, how would you characterise...
Could you clarify whether you have any association with the organisation that's calling itself the Muslim Vote, and whether you're supportive of its efforts targeting incumbent members across parties, but particularly in government, on their stance on Palestine at the next election?
Look, I'm not affiliated with this group. I've only had one meeting with them, like I have many meetings across the board with many community leaders and members. What they're doing is educating and ensuring that people have that political literacy. I want to support and have always supported the education element of wanting to empower people to make decisions, and this is a democratic decision for them to make, but I don't have any intentions of collaborating with them per se, and I haven't thought about it at this point.
Can you tell us, this is the most difficult decision of your life. How did you make that? And what's the last few weeks been like for you personally?
It has been very difficult, to say the least. Aside from receiving death threats and emails that were quite confronting, especially when it involves my family, and saying all sorts of awful things. But we know what we sign ourselves up to when we join public office. I think I did not expect the Prime Minister during QT yesterday to, make an assumption, or I wouldn't want to say accusation, but it felt like an accusation where I've been planning this for a month, because it's not true. I have not. The vote was purely based on my conscience, and after that, it was yesterday after QT where I thought, this is when I have to make a decision. This is the ultimatum provided to me, because that was the result that came out of my meeting with the Prime Minister at the Lodge on Sunday after I attended the Insiders program, where the ultimatum was provided. I either toe party line and come back inside the tent, or I give the position back to the Labor Party.
How did the Prime Minister make you feel in that exchange?
Sorry, exactly the same.
How did the Prime Minister make you feel in that exchange, and how do you characterise the Prime Minister's treatment of you throughout this whole saga?
Look, I respect the Prime Minister as the leader of this nation, and he's got important decisions to make. It was a stern but a fair conversation, just like how I characterised the previous one. In saying that, it was, I didn't know what I was going into in terms of not having a support person, but nonetheless, it was a conversation that needed to be had.
You've spoken about how you feel intimidated by your colleagues. Did you feel intimidated by the Prime Minister?
I wouldn't characterise it as that.
He's denied that he asked you, he gave you an ultimatum. It was reported and he's denied that subsequently in various conversations. Is he lying?
That's for the Prime Minister to answer, but I'm telling you my account of the events. I purely remember given that option of, you either stay and you toe party line, or you give up the position because you don't believe in caucus solidarity. So that was my understanding. I don't have the transcript in my brain, but from what I remember, that's what the exchange was.
What's the nature of it? The Labor Party structure not really meeting the moment that has become the increase in diversity in the party room, in the rank and file, in Parliament. Is there a version of the structure that maintains that core of solidarity that would have allowed themselves to also for an issue like that?
Look, there is room for dissenting voices to be accepted, and this isn't a view that I hold, but there are many upper house members across the nation in different states that feel the same way, that dissenting voices from backbenchers should be welcomed, especially if they are representing a specific demographic or constituency that feels strongly about a matter like this. This wasn't a piece of legislation per se. It was on a matter that we've got in the platform, and so that's why I felt very strongly and had to vote with my conscience on it. What the party continue to do from here on is their prerogative, but as I've said, I won't stop advocating for Western Australians in this place.
You've had a discussion with Glenn Drew, I understand. You kind of have more, and are you open to forming a political party? It seems states like Jackie Andrews or states independent. Can you just explain the nature of your conversations with Glenn and what that's about?
So I had a conversation with Glenn Drury a few days before I decided to cross the floor, and that event took place. Just like I've had many conversations with many other advisors and political strategists about, I'm a second year senator. There's a lot to think about and learn and understand about this process. So for me, it was just purely, a discussion that I had, and I'm not going to go into details. But I do not, at this stage, I do not plan to form a party. And, we'll stay tuned. But thank you so much for being here. I really do appreciate you taking the time. And, have a good day. Thank you.
Thank you.